Do you struggle with failure? Do you struggle with failure as a mom, as an entrepreneur, as the runner of your household? If you struggle with failure, the Possibility Mom Live is for you. So, I value transparency over here. If you have been following me for a while, you know how much I care about simply pulling back the curtain, as much as I'm comfortable pulling back. If you go back, we'll link this episode for you, but if you go back a couple episodes, I share how my small children took multiple bottles of nail polish and poured them all over my bathroom sink and floor and bathtub and counter. And I shared it in real time, and I shared my real time reaction. And so today's episode is going to be no different. On Friday mornings, every third Friday, you should star it in your calendar, because you're going to get something really juicy every third Friday. Every third Friday, I meet with my spiritual director, Father Damien. He's a priest, a Catholic priest up in Toronto, Canada. And we had been meeting in real life, obviously, when I lived in Toronto, where I was born and raised, for many years. I think I've journeyed with him for I want to say a good 5 years. And then when we moved to Florida, where I am now, he was like, I think it might be time for you to spread your wings and fly a little bit. And I was like, no, thank you. But like a good directee, I was like, okay, I'll listen to you. And then when we moved here, shortly after COVID happened, so I kind of was like, listen, can we just resume? Can we just pick this back up via Zoom? And he agreed. And so every third Friday we meet, and it's a really interesting experience. I get a lot of questions over on Instagram about how do you find a spiritual director? How do you, pick the right one for you? Do you pay them? All the kinds of things. So if you are interested in that, perhaps I could do a whole episode. I don't know, and maybe even interview. I wonder if you would ever come on for an interview. But if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. It's a Catholic practice that, to be honest, I'm sure even a non-Catholic could even take advantage of or benefit from. But it's a Catholic practice that I find many Catholics don't know that they have access to. There are priests trained in spiritual direction. There are lay people, men and women, who are trained in spiritual direction. It's a little bit different than coaching or counseling or therapy. It's not like confession. It's you are talking about what God is doing in your life, where you see him, where you are missing him, all those kinds of things. And you're being given specific feedback and advice, I guess, on what that looks like. What is the spiritual walk? What is your spiritual life, your spiritual practices? You're developing that with a spiritual director. I found it invaluable. And today was no different. And today was kind of frustrating, if I'm going to be really honest. Normally, I walk away from spiritual direction with Father Damien challenged, but usually a lot lighter. I'm usually very encouraged. I'm usually very challenged, but in a good way. I sometimes cry, but not often, I would say. But anyway, there's always something really profound, usually, that comes out of spiritual direction. I did an episode recently on who do you work for, and we will tag that for you guys here. That episode was very interesting based on all your feedback. A lot of you really, really, really liked the episode where I talked about who do you work for, and where the answer was you work for God. Anyway, and so I just received an enormous number of messages on that particular episode, and so we'll put that in the notes as well. But this time was actually challenging, but not in an uplifting way. I was ugly crying my eyes out, really not. I was very challenged. I don't often argue with him, but for a good 40 minutes, I basically was digging my heels in and saying, no, you're wrong. I disagree with you. You are wrong on this topic. I don't know what planet you're living on, but you are wrong. And I'll give you the context. Um, I have shared with you here how much I struggle with failure. And it stems from, many different things. Like I was historically throughout my life very used to succeeding. I got really good grades in school. So that was always very much affirmed. I have done many things in my life that, people would probably call success. And um, it is simply, I have a pattern of expecting success. And of course, I have also developed a pattern of, avoiding failure, having negative self talk when I do fail, being hard on myself. And through therapy, through coaching, through the work I do with a lot of women, I have helped myself in that regard. But I have lately been finding that it has been increasingly more difficult to um, deal with failure in my own life. And the way that it kind of came up was in this pregnancy. So I recently, announced that I'm pregnant for the ninth time, and I started to feel very frustrated by my lack of energy. And I would feel very frustrated by feeling like, well, I can't get things done. And it was just kind of, enough that I was like, this is really weird. I need to like talk about this more. So I took it to my coach, Aaron Ingold, and we talked about this at great length. And what we were able to deduce that underlying all of it was an epic fear of failure. That if I don't have energy, which is completely reasonable when you're pregnant, if I don't have energy while I'm pregnant and I don't do work, that somehow it equates bad, like epic bad. And so I've been wrestling with this. I use a tool called the Metanoia Catholic Journal. I've been journaling with this. And one of the exercises in the journal is a section on Lord, I repent from. And you fill in the blanks. And you ask for, help me out in this area, Lord. Like infuse in me virtue. If you're not familiar with the virtue, it's things like humility, patience. There's a whole slew of them. There's actually some debate over like the official, well, maybe not debate's the wrong word, but depending who you ask, there's all these different lists of virtues, but patience, fortitude, perseverance. And so I've just been looking back at my past journal entries and been reflecting on the patterns that I see. And the most common pattern is I repent of self-reliance and Lord, give me more humility. So this brings me to my spiritual direction today, where I say to my director, like, okay, so clearly this is a pride thing, and what we argued on was the tension between using your gifts, having a plan, but then also being completely ready to scrap that plan and maybe even potentially not use your gifts if that is God's will for your life in that particular moment. And I argued with him for a good 40 minutes. And I pulled up every resource you could think of. Now, I am not so good at quoting direct biblical verses or direct things from the catechism or other, classic tomes. Like I don't have that. I'm growing in that skill of memorizing these things a little bit. But so I'm quoting anything I can grasp from my memory about not hiding my talents under the bushel, basket, hiding them. You know what I mean? All the things. I'm like, Father Damien, you make no sense. And he was just like, you are clearly very challenged by what I'm saying. And again, through lots of just conversation and asking questions, he was very patient with the whole thing. What I was able to share with him was, I don't even want to fail at the pursuit of a holy existence. the fear of that for me is also very charged. And so what he counseled me on was like, listen, even the saints fail. This is why we have some of the things that we have in the Catholic practice, like the sacrament of reconciliation. For those of you who aren't familiar with what that is, we literally have built in things in the Catholic practice where you talk about your sins and are forgiven for them. Failing is simply a part of humanity, but I don't want to accept it. And that is the hilarious conundrum that I'm in today. And I'm so curious how you feel about failure. Is failure something for you that you avoid at all costs, like I do, that I'm beginning to realize is more of a problem than I have thought it is? Or have you found really great ways to make failure friendly, make failure safe? This is, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. I also coach a lot of Catholic entrepreneurs. I would say that my predominant clientele is about, I would say 90% Catholic. The other 10% is Christian. And then there are a few who, I work with that fall outside of those. But this is something I coach women in all day, every day, how to make friends with failure. When I read the stories of the saints, so right before this time of recording, I did a deep Google on saints who failed. And there are tons of stories of people who failed. Forgive me, I don't have their names at hand. I can find them later. But there was one saint in particular that I thought was so interesting. He felt very called to like start a bunch of things, like start orders, to be involved in community, to form other priests. And he kind of failed at it. Like, I think he opened an order, 3 people joined, and they all left. And it's so interesting to me. But then in his death, after his death, I'm not entirely, I'm not remembering all the details, but after he died, 20 orders were formed who cited him as the inspiration for their order. And I just think like things like that are so interesting. Now, when I read their stories, and again, I coach women in this all day, every day. When I read the stories of the saints who have failed, when I coach my clients who deal with very similar struggles, like type A personality, choleric temperaments, need for control, need things to be, da 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 da. Like it's easy. Like I see those stories and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's not failure. That's being completely open to the will of God in their lives, and this is what I encourage my clients on. But then of course, when I turn the tables on myself, I find it really challenging. Now, here's the thing that I want to, the aha, or the point of me rambling on about my own experience with failure is, so then I Googled, what is the definition of failure? And it was very interesting. There were lots of different things that I read. One was, for example, imagine like a log that's been cut up into a whole bunch of pieces, and now you're trying to put the piece back together. That was one sort of the vernacular failure, like the root of the word failure. That was one. Another one was really interesting, and it was just related to an image of what you have. And that's the one that resonates the most with me and why I am so challenged by failure. I have a picture for what I would like things to look like. And when things do not match up with that, so be it my home, be it the way my kids behave, be it the results I get in my business, be it literally anything, I get very frustrated. And that to me is failure. And so I was challenged again by one of my coaches in my life, who is currently designing that image. And then number 2, who should be designing that image. And here's where I have landed, and I'm so curious to hear what you think about this. So currently I am designing that image. But who should be designing that image? God should be designing that image. And even as I say that, like I'm just going to be so transparent and straight up with you, even as I say that, I'm like, that is way too scary. And I don't want that. But I want it, but I don't want it. I want it because I know that's ultimately what is going to bring me to ultimate freedom, to ultimate joy, to ultimate peace. I can't do this on my own. Like my version of it. And here's the funny thing is that I have so much evidence in my life of God's plans being way better than my own. This is a line, that literal line I just said. I have so much evidence of God's plan being better than my own. I think that shows up like maybe 3 times in my book, The Possibility Mom, because I remember my editor being like, you've used this phrase like a lot. We kind of have to like mix it up a little bit. And so when we edited, she kind of like took that out a bit. It stayed in like a few times, but she was like, we got to find other ways to say that. So I have so much evidence of that in my life, but the need to control, the need to feel like there's self-reliance like involved in that, and abandoning that is a really interesting thing. So I'm really curious. Let me know. DM me on Instagram. Leave me a message here if you're watching this on YouTube. Do you struggle like I do with having this picture of what life should look like? And how do you feel about allowing God to truly be the one who designs this picture? Now, one more thing I want to mention before I bring on my very special guest today, who I'm so excited to introduce to all of you, is that are you then not involved at all in designing this picture? Like, do you just abdicate all like responsibility? And I do not think that is the case either. We can co-design our life, if you will. We are involved. We cooperate in the design of our lives with God, certainly. I don't think that there's this like abdication of like, just whatever. But at the exact same time, there is. I do think that there's this interesting tension between surrendering all and having plans. I do a lot of work on vision boards. When I work with clients, it's part of like for most of my clients, there is some element of vision casting. What do you want your legacy to look like? Like, what are you feeling that God is calling you to? This is an exercise I do all the time. But I think what sort of really impressed upon me today from my spiritual direction and from my Google deep dive on saints who have failed is that you can have this picture, but that in the exact same breath, you are ready to throw it out and be open to whatever picture God wants for you. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Send me all the DMs and just let's keep this conversation going. You know how much I love to converse on topics like this, because ultimately these are the things that bring us to interior peace and bring us to freedom. And these are things, this particular topic of failure is so important for entrepreneurs. And in the women that I coach in making money, in building personal platforms, in building YouTube channels, all the things, this is the theme, like a major clanging gong that I see all the time. Oh, I'm so afraid. Oh, I have no idea what to say. Oh my gosh, I don't have the right recording equipment. Like, oh my gosh, there's no way. And it's all fear related. We have to, as entrepreneurs, for those of you who are building businesses, you need to hear me loud and clear. If you are multitasking, come back to me because this is so important. If we don't make friends with failure as entrepreneurs, as platform builders, as influencers of culture, as influencers of anything, we won't make the progress that I believe we're designed to make. This connection to failure and progress is so pivotal. And so I am just so excited to bring on my new friend, my very special guest, who has done a really incredible thing over on YouTube. So Tabitha Kelly, she is a mom of 5. She homeschools, and she has built this incredible platform sharing her life with others. She has incredible videos on going to Costco and spending $5,000 And she peels back the curtain on her Costco hauls, on how she cleans, on how she homeschools. But what I love about her channel is that it is so down to earth and relatable. She shares the mess. She shares her authentic feelings about the mess. She shares just the reality, and you can tell via the comments, you can tell by her number of subscribers, you can just tell that her audience is there for it. And I am so excited to introduce her to all of you. So welcome to the Possibility Mom
Hi.
YouTube expert, Tabitha Kelly. Hello, how are
Hey.
you?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Well, as you heard, I'm doing, I have post spiritual direction hangover. Like that is how I feel after I get out of time with him. But it is all good. It is part of it. Your hair looks so pretty.
Oh,
I can't
thank you.
wait for- So, for anyone who might not be familiar with you and your story, Tabitha, tell us a little bit about how you got started in YouTube and what you do today.
Okay, so I've actually been posting on YouTube for over 7 years now. And I originally decided to start a YouTube channel because I was pregnant with my third baby. And I was looking up different weeks of pregnancy just to see what was happening. And I found this whole community of ladies that share pregnancy updates. And I was having a hard time finding anybody that was talking about home birth or like the natural side of pregnancy. And that's kind of the way that I usually go. And so I thought that I could bring value to YouTube in that sense and just sharing natural remedies and just like my journey of home birth. So that's how I originally started. And then it's just kind of evolved from there. I shared all sorts of different things and now mostly focus on homemaking.
So fun. And I spent a good couple hours deep diving, rabbit trailing, like just all up in your YouTube channel. And for me, the ones that resonate the most are your daily routines, but the
Yeah.
realistic routines. And then Costco. So, I'm going to have 9 kids. We are
Mhm.
Costco, for sure veterans, but not like you. So
Yeah.
anybody who might not have watched, and we'll link one of these videos below. Um, Tell us what your typical Costco run looks like, because it is very different than mine, and I think very different than most.
It's definitely different. So my husband and I are both very busy and we're not like big shoppers. So we try to do as much as we can in one shot, which it really looks like a lot when you see the video and it's like $5,000 Costco haul and you see all this food in my kitchen. It's crazy, but it's to last us for like 6 months or longer. So we just go together, me and my husband, we grab 2 carts and we're pushing and pulling a cart in the store. And we actually check out twice when we go into the store. So we'll go through and we'll get all of the dry goods and stuff that doesn't need to be refrigerated. And then we'll go back through and get like the freezer stuff and everything. And it's crazy, but it really works out. And when you break down the cost, it makes sense. We're spending as much as like a typical family of 7 would.
Yeah, I love it so much. My only point of relatability to your Costco hauls is when I was doing production design for television, we would sometimes be dressing like 3 homes in a 2-week period. So I would go to stores like Home Goods or Walmart or Home Sense, and same thing. I would have a cart in front, I would have a cart behind. I would load them up with like home
Mhm.
decor, home accessories, and I would put them in my cart, and then I would come right back in and I would do a whole other thing. So I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Now, tell us when YouTube started becoming clearly something more than just a hobby. When did it start becoming something that you saw this could actually be a career? This is actually something I
Right.
can make money in.
So that was kind of always my goal with YouTube. I saw other women making a lot of money. I've always had that goal of being financially free or at least working for myself on my own terms. So 7.5 years ago, I started that channel. And like I said, I posted all sorts of different types of videos and I just didn't really have a focus or like a goal or a niche. And a lot of changes happened with YouTube. So I made the hard decision. I was at 20,000 subscribers, and I made the hard decision to start completely over
Oh, wow.
and start a new channel. So that's my current channel, This Mama's House. I started that in October of 2019. And it turns out that was the best decision I made, because now I have all the skills already, and I was able to kind of just grow really, really fast. And I'm on track to hit almost 100,000 subscribers within the next few weeks. And that's all in under 2 years, which is pretty unthinkable with YouTube and how it goes. But just like having the experience, I've taken a couple courses and stuff, and now I just have that knowledge. I'm able to apply it to my new channel, and it's just grown exponentially.
Okay, so let's all help her out with this goal of hitting 100,000.
Yeah.
We'll put her handle. Josh, let's put it in the banner. Everybody go subscribe to
Yeah,
Tabitha.
that would be awesome.
So and oh my gosh, and leave her a comment, like possibly
Yeah.
mom tribe or something. Like let her know that you're coming over from me. So because I think that this is what I do a lot of coaching on, not YouTube specifically, but I coach a lot of women who want to make money from from home, but with the similar kind of thing that you and I both care about: freedom, the ability
Mhm.
to be with our children, the ability to go to Costco and spend $5,000, and that's not on a credit card, which I think is
Right.
really interesting. um, this whole notion of being able to work from home so that you really can feel free to pursue the things that matter most to you is very important to me personally, but also in how I'm coaching women. So I'd love to just hear a little bit, if you could peel back the curtain as honestly as you're willing to.
Mhm.
What are some of the ways where you currently see this in your life? And what are some of the ways that it's actually a little bit difficult, or a video gets lost that you've done, or a child hits delete, those kinds of things. So why don't you start with some of the ways where you currently feel like you have a lot of this freedom?
So I'm homeschooling my kids, and I feel like that's huge for me. I've always desired to just have them home and be able to homeschool them. So that's a big thing. There's a cost that comes with it, and the time commitment too. So if I was to go to a job, I don't think I'd be able to homeschool. So that's a big thing for us. We also took an entire RV trip around the country, and that was documented on our YouTube channel. So that was a huge freedom thing. I mean, we traveled the country and we got to show our kids that. So those are just two big things. Just like the time, I guess, is probably the biggest thing. That's something you can never get back. And so that's something I value a lot, is my time. And that's the biggest freedom that I see with doing YouTube and making money this way.
Beautiful. Okay, now tell us the parts where it is difficult, like where you're trying to edit something but the baby is fussy, or you're trying to film something but your house is not quiet. Like give us a real picture, as much as you're willing to share with us, of the reality of working from home.
Yeah, it does get difficult with the little ones, especially that don't understand what I'm doing. The baby can be fussing, and sometimes I do have to just put YouTube on hold, and there's going to be a week where I missed an upload because family always comes first. And it does get hard with the kids, but most of the kids have been seeing me do this their whole life. So they really understand what I'm doing and that this is my job. And it does kind of, on the other side of the screen, the pressure from the community to always keep up with the uploads and to share more, that kind of gets difficult for me too
Mm,
sometimes, because
that's so
I'll miss one video and people are like, where are you at? Are you okay? When's the next video? And I'm like, guys, I'm a mom of 5. Like, I'm still here. I'm not quitting. But it'll be like 6 days and people will start messaging me, wondering where I'm at. So
yeah, that's so interesting. And again, I think the beautiful, like, what's really beautiful about that is that you have built this kind of community that
mm,
cares about where you are and what
yeah.
you do. But then of course, maybe share with us a little bit about that. Like, how do you handle then that pressure? How do you handle the negative self-talk, or maybe the feelings? Like, do you struggle with feelings of not being enough and failure? Like,
Oh, definitely. You speaking on the failure thing, you always hear in the entrepreneurial world that, failure is just a stepping stone, or, that you learn from failure. And that's so true. And I try to remember that. But I definitely am my own worst critic, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to make content, and I definitely feel happiest when I'm being productive, and I guess I feel like the most worth when I'm being productive. But I really try to just pray, and I do try to devote like all of my work to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And I don't talk about that a lot, but since I'm on a Catholic podcast, I think I can. But yeah, that's, I think, one of the biggest things that have brought me a lot of success is just kind of like devoting all of my work to them, and offering up any of my struggles for the love of God.
And it's, I think this is the tension for Catholic entrepreneurs primarily, and Christian entrepreneurs for sure. Is this tension between the plan and then leaving lots of room for God. So let's just talk about that, because I'm sure you had, like, when you rebranded yourself right before the pandemic, which I think is such cool timing.
Yeah.
When you started that new channel, you probably had some goals, or did you have some goals, or were you just completely?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, okay.
Well, so I had 20,000 subscribers, and I thought, well, at least 10,000 will come over or something. And I was kind of shocked that within like a week, I only had around like 1,000. And I thought, oh, geez, what did I do? Like, this is the wrong move. But like I said, I just decided from the very beginning of this channel that my channel was going to be for Jesus. And everything I put out was going to be to try to glorify God. And I think that's really helped me, because doing this for so many years and barely making $100, and all the time you spend and all the money you spend sometimes on camera gear and computers and all that stuff, something just wasn't clicking, and I was doing it, and finally when I brought God into the picture, I think is really when it took off.
That is so fascinating. So tell us more about that. Like, what does that look like in practice? Like, when you are about to sit down and edit, is there anything you do before you start? Like, what does that part look like in actual habit?
Usually when I'm struggling, like when the kids are being loud or something, I'll say, "This is for you, Jesus." When I'm about to publish the video, I'll say it, and I try to just have those little moments. We're all busy as mothers and housewives. We always have 1,000 things to do, and it's sometimes hard to get that devoted time to prayer or reading spiritual readings and stuff. So you kind of have to just add it in throughout the day, and that's what I try to do.
That is fascinating. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a really easy book. It's called Holiness for Housewives. It's just like this thin little book, but it's the second time I'm going through it. And you can get it on Amazon for like $11, I think, but it's really good. And it that's what it talks about, is just kind of having those small moments throughout the day, like in the midst of doing your duties, that can be your prayer.
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah.
So you are now launching something very exciting, which I'm sure you had your own, things with failure on. I'm sure it hasn't been, I'm sure there's been thoughts of failure as you've gone. Tell us about this new endeavor that you are launching.
So on August 2nd, I'm launching This Mama's YouTube course. So I'm going to be teaching stay-at-home moms the exact strategy on how to make an income through YouTube. It's going to be A to Z. So I'm going to share literally everything I know and what you need to do to grow on YouTube. And it's not just going to be like SEO and all that kind of technical stuff, but I'm also going to be sharing like how my days go and how I plan, and like the productivity side of things, and how to kind of organize your life to be able to do this, especially as a stay-at-home mom or as a mom with lots of kids.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. It's a very I think we're in a really interesting time in history. I think we're in this time where obviously the pandemic forced a lot of people home, but it also forced a lot of ingenuity. And it's funny to me because I'm like, the mom YouTubers already had all this ingenuity.
Yeah.
They already had this figured out. Like, they had already figured out how to take their lives and make content from it and what have you. So tell me, what is the most fun part about making content from your life, and what is the most challenging part?
I definitely think the community, I think everybody says this, but it's just the community of people that you get to have. Like my followers have become my friends. And I saw a meme the other day that was something like nobody supports you like the internet friend you've never met. And I think that's true because there's so many people that I've never met in person, but just support me and are cheering for me. So definitely the community is my favorite part of YouTube. And like I said, the pressure to always be producing, and never get a break, that's probably my least favorite part. But I think a lot of that pressure just comes from myself more than anything.
I love it. So what advice would you give anybody who wants to make a living on YouTube?
So I think if you have an idea for a channel, I think it would be smart to come up with 50 video ideas that are all in the same niche, which is basically like your topic or category. And I think if you can come up with 50 ideas, you have a really good, solid channel idea. And I think that would be a really good start.
Amazing. So I am so excited for your course. I'm like, I want to encourage everybody to go check it out. We will put the link. What is it called again?
This Mama's YouTube course.
Everybody,
it's for anybody, but mostly stay-at-home moms or moms that want to do this.
There are a lot of moms in my world who are interested in making YouTube a full-on career that provides monetary compensation for for their family. So if you are looking to do that, definitely go check out Tabitha's course. Tabitha, my last question for you is, if you could go back in time to maybe not the beginning of your YouTube career, let's go August 2019. If you could go back in time and tell a younger Tabitha anything, what would you tell her?
Just follow God's plan for your life. And sometimes it's hard to hear God, but just pray and spend time in the sacraments. And I think then your prayers will be answered.
Oh, look at you. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, Tabitha.
Thanks for having me on.
Everybody go subscribe so she can go hit that 100,000 subscribers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, that was fun. Listen, here's the thing. There is always hope. If you are like me, maybe you're in a season of struggling with failure. Maybe this is something that you just sort of have always struggled with. I really just want to share with you that there is always hope. And when, like Tabitha shared, when we can truly place everything in the trust of a loving God who desires the best plans for our lives. P.S. This is me saying this directly to myself. This is me coaching myself through you, through the screen, through my iPhone. But when we can have that surrender, that we have a loving Father who desires a future full of hope for us, I just think that's when things can really happen, like Tabitha shared. And so that is my prayer for all of you. That is my prayer for myself as well. I want to acknowledge a couple of comments. Holly Rivers says here, I totally have my own picture of what my life should look like, but my ultimate desire is to live out the life Christ has for me. Beautiful. She also shares, failure leads to progress. You live and you learn. Friends, thanks for spending some time with me. It's always a pleasure. I am so, Tabitha talks about community. I'm so grateful for the community that is going on over here at the Possibility Mom. May you always feel like there is possibility. May you always feel like there is tons of room, abundant room for hope. Next week, I really want to encourage you to come back live if you can, because I'm going to be sharing some really candid thoughts around Catholic mom guilt. I know I've got lots of people in my little corner of the internet of various faith backgrounds. Next week is going to be so specifically for the Catholic mamas who struggle with guilt, and particularly guilt around doing anything that might distract you or pull you away from your vocation as a mother. We are going to dig into um, just really like, I'm just going to share some really candid, really candid thoughts grounded in church history and in authentic Catholic anthropology. And so I want to encourage you to join me live if you can next week, where I'm going to be just unpacking this topic of Catholic mom guilt. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching. As always, if you are watching this on YouTube, if you would subscribe, that would mean a great deal. And if you are listening to this on podcast form, if you can download the podcast, it helps get the podcast heard and in the earbuds of more moms who might need it. And if this was helpful to you or inspiring to you or challenge you, I would love for you to share it with a friend. Alrighty, always in your corner. Have an amazing weekend. Bye for now.